Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Portland, Maine Board of Education Finance Personnel and Operations Committee meeting. It is August 25th at 6:02 p.m. and we are getting started. Let's see, we have Board Member Opperman, we have Board Member Sawtell. I am Board Member Sarah Bryden, I'm the chair of the committee. We have Superintendent Scallon, we have Jennifer Slaybank, who is the Director of HR. We have Lisa Beck from Finance. We got a great group. We are going to be talking about, let me alt tab over to that list. We're going to be talking about having a discussion about our priorities for the year and finalizing that. We're going to talk about the topics that we will be seeing before this committee on a monthly recurring basis. We are going to look at which of the board policies might need to be reviewed in the coming weeks and months relative to this committee. We're going to get a discussion of financials and personnel. And before we jump into all of that, I'm going to see if there's anybody who might want to give public comment. And there is nobody who could potentially give public comment. I'm seeing head shaking. But I do see that Board Member Noor has joined us and Heather Peters has also joined us. So welcome. So with that, thank you, Superintendent Scallon, for confirming that there are no attendees who may be able to raise a Zoom hand for public comment. So I will close public comment. And Dr. Scallon, I will turn it over to you to kick us off through the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bryden. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all. Staff returned today. And so most of our staff, there's a couple that join a little bit later this week, but it was nice to start to see our school buildings fill up with staff as they get ready for the start of the school year. Just gonna pull up the slide deck here. There we go. Since Chair already did a good job of going over what we're going to talk about, I'm just going to jump into content. Below are the draft priorities that the committee identified in the August 11th meeting. And so they are there: maintain strong financial controls, maintain strong personnel systems. I took some of the other ideas that came in the conversation and wondered if we could lump them all into this idea of maintain strong personnel systems. Support progress on a facilities master plan. Establish an equitable funding formula for schools and departments. And you can see in the parentheses which priority it aligns to in the strategic plan, and then establishing new transportation policies and routes. And so this is what was discussed at the last meeting. And Chair, I would see if there's any discussion adjustments before we finalize these.
Sarah, you're on silent.
Thank you, Dr. Scallon, so much. Yes, thank you for sharing that again. That was indeed what I was saying. Could you please share it again? And also I apologize for having to miss the August 11th meeting. So I, was not part of the conversation where these priorities got enumerated. I mean, I'm in alignment at a high level. I am a little bit curious about the A, B, and C under 2 and the level of granularity around, just trying to strike that right balance between the high level nature of board work and the more in the weeds detailed work of staff. That's the only thing that jumped out at me. But I also would invite board members who were part of that conversation to share their thoughts as well.
I think I was the one who was saying, I think that there needs to be more clarity about who to go to on the staff to get the correct answer. And that's, coming from a teacher perspective and so many changes now at central office. But it also comes from, being on the board and having a lot of people reach out to me and say, like, I know this isn't a board matter, but I have this question or I have this issue or, how come these things are happening? And there's someone actually at central office that I think could probably answer that question certainly better than I could.
Mhm.
And it doesn't need to come through me. Like, people should know who's available to talk to them about certain issues.
Yeah, I totally agree on all of those statements. Any other thoughts or insights that folks want to share? And also, just to confirm, Dr. Scallon, this is essentially a high-level enumeration of priorities. It's not something we're voting on, correct?
I think getting confirmation of like this feels like the
Yeah.
right list and will
Yep.
sort of be the check and balance of, is it something we want to make sure we focus on, or is it
Mhm.
something that may get tackled in another year?
Yep.
So I don't know if a
Mhm.
formal vote is needed, but
Mhm.
confirmation that people feel like it's the right direction, I think would be helpful.
Yep. Super. Thank you. Any other folks that would like to share thoughts on what we have on the screen at the moment? And I assume that anybody that was part of the conversation that led to this list is comfortable with the list. And I appreciate Board Member Sawtelle, I appreciate that perspective. I don't have an issue with the breaking out of those A, B, and C items. I appreciate the perspective. I hearing not a lot of additional comments that folks want to share. I think we are good.
Great, perfect. If it's all right with folks, just because I'm going to take notes on the slides as well as we're going, if you can see this all right, I'll leave it in this mode. If you want me to project, I can, but I can't see anybody and I can't write.
I I think yes, you can do that, and I don't think it's going to cause us any problems. It would cause more problems if you couldn't see us.
Great. So the next step we're going to do is just look at the revised calendar based on feedback from August 11th. But before we do that, we had talked with the committee last month or last 2 weeks ago. I'm used to it being months, on what folks want to see on a monthly or regular basis. And so I've listed them here. We talked about it on staff and just confirmed that it should be possible. And so under finance, we would do the monthly financial reports, as we've been doing. And then as appropriate, meaning when it happens,
Mhm.
we would share any financial transfers between cost centers greater than $50,000, expenditures for substantial capital improvements, leases, and purchases or expenditures greater than $250,000. And so we would share that here, and then it would go to the board for approval. On the personnel side, personnel at the board level is usually a pretty quick review and vote. And so what we thought would be helpful is to bring each month the employee hires list, the resignations, a review of any what I'm calling paperwork, but it's really background checks, credentials, that type of work, just to make sure that we're maintaining our expectations there. We do a monthly review of vacancies and as appropriate staff feedback from the surveys, interviews that we are launching this year. And so outside of the topics that would be specific to a meeting, these are things you would assume to see each meeting or each month as indicated, or as appropriate as they come up throughout the year. I just, again, want to pause to see if there's anything where folks feel like it's missing or they have a question before we look at the calendar.
Oh.
Great. So calendar made some changes based on feedback at the last meeting. And so you can see, just to orient you again to this slide, the first column is the first meeting of the month. The second column is the second. And where there are dashes is because there's only one meeting in that month. So October and May only have one meeting. The big changes that happened, if I can call them big, from August 11th is there was a request to switch or move earlier personnel SOPs and equity training. So I put that at the end of September and moved the technology and main PERS update to October. There was also a request to have a deeper understanding around the adult education or PAE budget, and especially in preparation for the budget process in the spring. And so I added that to the calendar in November based on that request. I think those are the changes that if you looked at it from last time that you would see.
Superintendent, can I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
Great. So if I'm understanding correctly, these are sort of the highlight topics for each of these meetings. But it's not an all-inclusive list. We will be getting the monthly updates that we have talked about. And also, I'm thinking specifically of the February and maybe even that second January meeting. I assume we'll be starting the process of talking about budget priorities. Just thinking about this past, I feel like this past budget cycle, we front loaded a lot of the work in terms of identifying committee member and board member priorities. And I feel like that yielded a really successful process. So just wanting to confirm that that's the plan for these meetings as well.
Yes, and we can adjust it if you feel like it should be called out even more. So in November is where we're looking at budget process priorities.
Yep.
From the committee. December is coming back to that. And one thing I want to add this year, because I think it would help, is what would it look like if we did no changes to the budget and just carried forward?
Okay. Yep.
So what does that look like? And I would expect coming out of that November meeting that we would add a couple of secondary topics.
Yep.
To December and January to, as you said, dig into the identified priorities.
Yeah, super. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent Scallon, I just wondered if, in addition to saying what would happen if we left it at the level it is, and perhaps what might be if it was slightly smaller, you know, a % million down, just to may have that reference point. I don't know if that is the stage at which we can do that, or would you rather wait until we get into the project, the whole thing, and start thinking about it?
So I defer to you. I think the difference between what I'm thinking and what you just proposed, not that we couldn't do what you just suggested, is my carry forward budget idea is just absent any policy decisions, any preferences, right, for % increase or maintain or initiatives. It is simply if we took this year's budget, let me rephrase that. If we took this year's staffing, programming, etc., what would next year cost?
Got it.
So that it gives you sort of like that baseline.
That's fine. So we can work from there, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, clarifications? I think we're all set.
Right, just making one note here, just so we remember to share this with folks. Board follow. Great. We are whipping right along here. Could be done for a snack in between meetings. So
We'll see.
knock on wood here. A little early to call that yet. The committee, as I think of it, shares responsibility with our policy committee for policies that cover finance, personnel, and/or operations. As an example, when we were looking here at what should be presented out on a monthly or regular basis, it was reflecting what was in the policy DIC, or for personnel, GCF, GCFB, etc. And so policy really impacts what we see and discuss. And so what has been listed here is all of the relevant financial policies. There's a small change that was made within the last couple of hours, which is that I added a double asterisk to a small number of policies that are required based on a recent audit we had from the state on our special education programming. And so just want to name that there are a lot of policies where the board will make a choice, and there's a couple where we'll say, look, we really need to do this because of audit requirements. And so what I'm going to look for here from the board and from you, Chair, is any identification of where we want to focus. And so what is available to committee and to the public is all of the links to items that are particularly focused on finance, personnel. As you can imagine, personnel is a significantly longer list. There's 3 pages of it. There's not the double asterisk for any of the personnel because none of them were flagged within that review. And then because this is finance, personnel, and operations, I also included those that impact facilities, food service, technology, or transportation. So, Chair, I will defer back to you on how you want to get feedback from the committee.
Yeah, thank you for compiling this list. I also wanted to just take a moment and acknowledge that there are some policies that have not been updated in some time, and they still refer to the school committee when we are the Board of Education. I think there are a number of, I mean, I don't want to list all the ones out that I identified that issue with, but there's definitely a number of these policies that will need to have at least that level of update, if not actual content update. I also am curious about the ones, there are several that refer to either the Executive Director of Budget and Finance or Chief Financial Officer. And I'm curious about whether there would be a way to, I'm assuming that both of those titles in various policies refer to the same, are intending to refer to the same individual. So is there a way that we can find a term that is more generic so that as titles change, we're not having to go back and change policies just to, senior executive director of budget and finance or what have you. I think that would be important. In terms of how to spend our next chunk of time in this committee meeting, I would be curious to hear from my fellow board members which policies they flagged as potentially needing a review based on content. I know I had some where I have questions, and that might mean a need for review. I don't necessarily think that we should be workshopping the policies within this conversation, but I would look to my fellow board members to see which policies you flagged as, oh, we need to take a closer look at this. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I sent something to you and the other board members. I think some of you may have reached it. I went through them all, and I know my other board members did as well. And you're right, a lot of them are just that kind of fix the language piece. But I ended up finding about 10 or 15 things that some of which are just, it would be really useful in the policy list to have what we call an R section or a, how is this particular policy going to be handled? And so that in that particular list that I put out, that was one of them. So other than that, there are some other specific things that I really wonder about. So I will hold a bit because since I've done that, I would like to hear what other people think first.
Sure. Board Member Sawtelle. So I'm curious, Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead. I saw you go off.
I'm sorry, I'm juggling 3 different windows that are open because I made notes in an email to myself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that clear, and of course I didn't look at them. So I have some questions and things, but it's gonna take me a minute to kind of go back and
Sure.
forth screen to screen.
Sure.
So
Yep. And then board member Noor, if you have thoughts and any policies that you flagged, we would certainly welcome your insights. While board member Sautel is sort of, organizing and preparing some thoughts to share, I will say that, again, I noticed some just, semantic updates that need to be made. I am curious about for example, DJC indicates that for petty cash, middle and high schools have impressed accounts, but it doesn't say anything about elementary schools or anything else. So like that's interesting. Uh where did it go? DFD talks about, it's very quaint. It talks about television coverage, and I'm curious about whether the MPA still has a fee schedule for this, because it refers to a fee schedule from the Maine Principals Association. But I am curious about whether there are any relevant fees with respect to online streaming that might, have taken the place of television fees. So that was an interesting question that I had as I was going through. And then let's see. GBN, I noticed, talks about federal and state FMLA, but it needs to have paid family and medical leave included in it. I'm also curious about and this is another sort of question in the bucket of levels of granularity. I'm curious about why, and there might be a reason for this, but I'm curious about why policy GBN goes into great detail about the eligibility requirements under the various leave laws versus just pointing to those laws themselves. So that's something that I noticed as sort of interesting. I just at a sort of gut, approximation level, to me, it feels like maybe 35% of these policies might merit some actual content review, as opposed to, change school committee to Board of Education. And I think that it probably makes sense to work through those in terms of gathering the feedback and gathering questions and feedback within this committee, and then partnering with the policy committee to actually get the changes made, vetted, and finalized. But I am also interested in hearing, for example, from board member Sautel, if you've had a chance to sort of figure out your windows, what your thoughts are on the various policies as well.
yes, I'm part of the confusion is that I have not yet gotten in the habit of referring to things by the initials. So like I had just written numbers, for instance, the use of social media by school employees, which is like number 17 on the list, GBEEA. It's really, really outdated.
Mhm.
There's stuff in that doesn't exist anymore, and I don't think it mentions Snapchat or Instagram. It just, if someone were to read that, it just almost seems like laughably out of date. Sad to say. Okay, and I can't remember what this means, but number 22, which does have an asterisk next to it, I had written a note that that policy, I've been on a lot of interview committees, and it would be really good if, for people who are on an interview committee, knew that policy, maybe it should be stated at the start of each, hiring process or interview process. And in most of the interviews that I was in the last few years, I didn't really feel like that was reflected in the questions that were asked to potential candidates. The questions were not representative of that policy. I said number 7. Sorry, Ryan, to make you jumping all over the place. It was structure. Okay, that's not asterisk, so I guess I don't need to talk about it, but I know the administrative organization plan is something that changes with each, change in superintendency. And for whatever reason, I flagged that as something that isn't reflected in that policy that much. Can we go down to like 24? Thank you for jumping around, because this is helping me from having to go back over. Oh, yeah. Just at 24, again, is something that really needs to be like understood, reiterated, hasn't been necessarily followed in my experience in a lot of ways, and maybe with changes at central office should be revisited. And it's number 28.
Evaluation.
Oh, yep. So that's, again, this is all coming from, my teaching experience. The evaluation process, whether it's based on Danielson or based on something else, was so confusing, and performant isn't the word I want, but just not clear and not consistent from school to school. It's like the understanding of building administrators of this as a policy isn't that great. And then 29, same thing. Like when we used to do it wasn't climate and culture survey. It's a survey that we pay somebody to put together. It was always really hard to know, like, whether as teachers we were evaluating our building administrators or the administration in general, or the climate of the school, or there's just so many layers and confusion to the hierarchy. I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about like knowing who to call and who's actually in charge of things, and my concerns over back with number 7 about needing job descriptions and a clear structure. It's probably clear to those of you who are in the middle of it all the time, but for someone in the classroom, it never was. In the 30 plus years that I worked in the Portland schools, it was always really confusing about who was in charge of what.
Yeah.
And
Board member, oh, sorry to talk over you.
No, that's just it. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Next time I'll know to.
No, I actually have a follow-up question for you. So when you were talking about 28 and 29 in particular, I'm really curious about whether you feel as though the content of those policies is lacking, or if it's that the policy itself is good, and like in terms of implementing the policy, that's where the work needs to happen.
I think it's more implementation of the policy.
Okay. Okay.
But also the policy itself, like tightening it down so that it's less open to sort of random interpretation.
Okay. Okay. Um, that's helpful. Thank you. So I am, as we're going through this, I'm curious about whether it might make sense to say, in part because terminology is going to have to change in most of these, that all of the policies that have not been reviewed since, let's say 2022 or earlier, should at least get a cursory look. And then while we're going through that process, that will also give us an opportunity to ask questions about what certain things mean and whether they're still relevant. And clean up the word school committee and change it to Board of Education, things like that. And also have an opportunity to look at whether additional changes need to be made, and then move those through the policy committee to actually make those updates. Are there concerns with that approach?
Hello? Hello?
Julianne has her hand up.
Oh, yes, I had scrolled over to the
Yeah.
Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
I think you're right. I think the policy, having been on the policy committee, they're going to want direction. Because I mean, it's so much, and they have, multiple beyond this to go over and review and the like. So I think any direction we can give them, I think you're right in two ways. Some of the stuff is just clarity. And so perhaps by just giving them questions would be helpful on particular ones. I'm prepared to, since Jane is done, and I don't know whether Fatuma has anything more to add, and if you're done. I mean, I got some I would like to say quickly what I went over, just because I think it's thought to what this committee needs to think about, and maybe a couple of the other committees need to think about. So I'll follow your lead.
Oh, no, thank you for pointing out that I don't think I was as clear as I wanted to be. So what I meant was not that we would say, oh, everything that's prior to 2022 for a last revised date, just over the wall to the policy committee. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that anything that has not been revised since before 2022, we as our committee would go through and sort of look at all of those and gather up questions, to Board Member Sautel's point, the social media one is really out of date, those sorts of things, and then package that all up and send that over to the policy committee. So I apologize.
Are we going to do that today?
No, that's not what I was intending to do, because I think it's more than 90 minutes worth of conversation.
Okay.
But Board Member Opperman, what were the items that you had flagged specifically?
There are about 20 of them. So I don't know if you want, they are by Jane, Member Sautel, they are by letter, but they're in the order that were in what Dr. Scallon has up. For example, CF has to do with evaluations of principals. Again, something very important, something that's done clear. It doesn't say how often they're done, or the particular technique of how to do that. That was the one I saw on that. CHD, I gotta look at that, what it says. The name on, what's the name on CHD?
Administration and policy absence.
Yeah, any limitations? I mean, largely it's relative to personnel in this instance. Is there any other limitations that we want to, have in that kind of a situation? Not to say that we have to, but that is something that struck me. On EEA, no, I'm getting into this. Oh yeah, bus drivers. How often do we do that? What's the regulation on that, or internal handling of that? Is it every year? Is it only on hiring? Is it spontaneous? Is it regular? Just as a thought that should be something on that. GAB, that was that's the 5-year plan? No, that's not the 5-year
Job
plan.
descriptions.
What is
That's-
GAB?
That's job descriptions.
Oh. The reference to, can't see, reference to how often, it's something in there, does it say something in there about 5-year? That's what my note says.
Yes, it
Okay,
says.
so just, I didn't know
uh,
when it was last done.
Yep.
So that piece. Under GBEC, drug use and blah, 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 in alcohol use, etc. Change of environment, what's the state law say? What does the federal law say? And how do we deal with medical uses since we have now medical marijuana? So, I mean, because marijuana is pointed out in that, is that something we want to say if you're on marijuana, you cannot use it in school, that kind, I mean, so I think that needs to be thought out. CBEE is the referee thing. And it's interesting, it's saying basically you can't referee if you're, if you work in the system. The question I have is, we have 3 professional teams now here, and I don't know if how that, I wasn't quite sure where that particular rule was coming from, but that was, be interesting to know. Maybe Jane, you can know about that a bit more in retrospect, but it just seems,
Julianne, which policy was that?
that's CBEE.
Okay.
It's referees.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. I don't think I got it onto here.
Oh, well, it was there,
Yep.
because that's the list I went from, but you took it off. Or maybe
I
not.
didn't mean to, so
I know,
it's
I'm
good.
sure you didn't, but that was there. That was the thought. I agree with social media context, texting for school events in the whole discussion. This came up in policy having to do with the cell phone stuff. And in that respect, there's a whole discussion on uses of technology among everybody and what's appropriate for students and what's appropriate for teachers. The one on that one is texting for school events. Texting, who can you text for? And so that now it's just a different environment. So to look at that, whatever GB, and that was the one you were talking about. What's the contracts and state laws? Contracts go all over leave stuff. Do we have to have it in the policy? Since every contact goes over that. Campaign and CBI, campaign and politics. It talks just about office holding, but do we have any thoughts on politics? Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, but is one thing, like in the context of a class or even discussion and things like that. But the question is on, that was just very peculiar. I didn't understand it. That was so narrow. So again, wasn't sure. GCE refers to affirmative action plan. Do we talk it like that anymore? Or do we have different terms for that? That's GCE. And GCG, which is about student teachers, is too specific about USM, it's out of date. And then related to that is mentoring. It doesn't refer, GCH refers to how do you bring on board somebody and a teacher, is that mentoring? What are we really doing on that practice? And does the policy reflect that practice of mentoring? You want me to keep going?
I actually, so board member Opperman, I actually think that, at least from my perspective, where we are landing here is that more of these need a review than don't. And that, so the volume of review work is pretty extensive. And I think, what I'd like to propose to see what folks think of this idea is to say that for each of our meetings, I would invite each committee member to pick the of this list, the item that they feel most strongly needs our review. Bring that forward with some, bullet points or, some quick summary of here's what I think needs to be changed so that we can, at each committee meeting spend about 15 minutes talking about, each board member's policy item of that meeting, and package that up and send that over to the policy committee. So we're not So,
Yeah.
so there's a drip of content going over there rather than an avalanche. For
Fine with me.
yeah, yeah,
I'm just saying, I mean, when going into it,
yeah.
if you think, it was somewhere it was said that it would only take an hour to go over all these. And I think it took more like 3 hours to get to that.
There's a lot here. There's a lot here.
Yeah. So, all right, I will stop, but one thing before the beginning of school year, though I do want to say to reference to the data sheets,
Mhm,
in people who work with chemicals, whether it's lab teacher or
mhm,
a janitor or that sort of thing.
mhm,
I had a concern about training being clear and understandable, and if there are any language and literacy issues. That's just a really
mhm. Yep.
thing has to be very careful about. So that was one I felt like, all right, I just need to ask about that one, and then I'll get to the other ones.
Okay, so I will ask all the committee members to please send me an email by the end of the week with what they feel is the most important policy to take a look at next. And if there's duplication, then I will deal with that individually, so we're not doing business by email. Board Member Satel, go ahead.
Can somebody in 30 seconds or less explain to me the policy lettering? Because I was thinking maybe you had like a way to abbreviate the titles, or is it by,
No, it's policy. Can I explain, Sarah? Because that's what we.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There is a national list of topics. You know, if you go that list and if you go to under policies and it has these like A, B, so anything having to do with students is going to be J, anything having to do with instruction is going to start off with an I, and then there's some subcategories, and it's a discussion. So if we talk in our school about something with a policy IJ, it means the same thing in another school. That's what that is. So it's a pain. It really was not fun. So
so it's like the Dewey Decimal Systems.
exactly. I can send you a copy of what the lettering thing is if you want to know.
I won't remember, but thank
That's
you.
okay. No, I mean it's like multi-page worth. Okay, done.
Thanks.
So Dr. Scallon, I don't think that we're necessarily going to make more progress within a conversation here. But we will be working through in each meeting a few at a time.
That sounds great. Can I make one proposed slight adjustment to
Yes.
the homework
Yes,
you
you
asked?
can.
Is perhaps after receiving that feedback,
Mhm.
the chair of the finance committee and the chair of the policy committee,
Mhm.
as well as the representative staff come together
Yep.
and just map it out so we can have one play card. Does
Yes,
work
that
for
makes
folks?
sense.
Cool.
That makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
I'm happy to help facilitate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Great. With that, we got two more pieces. So first, we're going to have Lisa Beck present on July 2025 financials. So this is the first financials of this fiscal year. And then we will have Jennifer Slaybank just preview the personnel that will be discussed at board tomorrow. So Lisa, would you like me to present your slides?
Yes, please.
Great.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. So as we did last time, we're going to start with just a summary and then we'll show the actual numbers. So we're going to start with revenues coming into the district. So the district has collected 9% of its budgeted revenues for fiscal year FY26. So with 1 month, we are at 9%. If we were to split all of our revenues evenly over the 12 months, it would be at 8.33%. So we're really right where we expect to be at this stage of the year. The general fund is going to be slightly higher, and that's due to some main care reimbursements that did come in July, but that were for FY25 services. Adult ed will be a little bit lower than that 9% because their state subsidy doesn't come in until mid-year. Food service revenues are also going to be lower just because they don't come in until school starts. So there's not much in July there. If what's there is going to be from summer school. And then we didn't record any grant revenue during the month of July, and that is typical. We don't record grant revenue until the state actually approves, because remember that many of our grants are on a reimbursement model, so we have to submit for reimbursement. Until the state approves that, we won't record it in our ledger. And they typically do take a little longer to approve over the summer. They take vacations as well. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We did have one new grant received during the month of July. So that's a Nellie Mae Education Foundation grant for $100,000. And that's for improving outcomes for historically underserved students and families. So our multilingual team will be leading the charge with that grant.
And if I can just chime in here, that grant is in alignment to the strategic plan initiative that is looking at deepening support for historically underserved students. And so Nellie Mae is supporting the design work for it this year.
All right, so here are the numbers that go along with kind of the summary that I just shared. So you'll see, so we spoke about the general fund. We spent about 13.5 million out of the 153 million budgeted, or 9%. Adult education, 183,000 out of their 3.4, so that's about 5%. And then food service is 101 or 111,000 out of their 5.6, which is 2%. So that's what gets us to that 9% of budget spent, or of revenues received for July. And then, as I mentioned, no grant revenues came in during July. All right, so next we'll talk expenditures, or monies going out of the district. So we have expended 7% of our budget for the fiscal year so far to date. Again, if we spread it evenly over the 12 months, it would come in at 8.33. So we're right about where we expect to be at this stage. The general fund and food services are always lower in July and August since school is not in session. Adult ed has is less affected by the summer months. And then grant expenditures also, of course, go down during the summer months as well. When we look at the numbers, you will see an unbudgeted 111,000 in the other grant line item. That is actually for staff and student computers that are being purchased through the Maine Learning Technology Initiative. So we are able to be reimbursed from the state for those expenses, which should happen by September. And then if we look at it by category, personnel expenses are lower in July due to many of our staff not working that are hourly. And then supplies are always higher because schools are just getting ready for the new year. So if we go to the next slide, we'll show the actual numbers. And so these are the numbers by fund. So you can see we've spent 10.4 million in the general fund, which is the 7%. Adult education has spent 302,000, which is 9% of their budget, and food service is at 98,000, or 2% of their budget. So that brings us to a total of 7% total. And then you can see there's been some grant expenditures, but they're much smaller during the summer. And then the next slide will show it by category. So this is where you can see personnel. We've used about 6% of our budget for the year. Contracted services is also 6%. But supplies is 19% because we typically order a lot of those supplies for the new school year over the summer. So that one comes in a little higher, but will drop off later in the year. And other costs are at 10% and debt service at 6%. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Board Member Opperman, go ahead. Oh, Board Member Opperman, you're muted.
My turn. And one of the first things, with the main care that came in, and that goes on the old budget as far as auditing goes. Is that correct? Just to my clarity.
No, for revenues, it will be recognized when it's received. So it was received in July, so it will go on FY26, but it is a main care reimbursement for services that actually occurred in the previous
So
school
we
year.
aren't actually getting more money. It's just getting what
It's
we
just the timing.
It's
Yep.
just a thing like that. And okay, and Nellie Mae, that's design work, yeah, not implementation, which means this is figuring out how to implement it, and then the regular budget would have the regular funds would have implementation costs. I guess that's how that one is designed.
So,
Yes.
so actually a timing piece. So this year it is all design work. And
Mhm.
so it's really digging into the data and the programming and saying, is the programming having the impact that it's
Okay.
designed to have? Are there other programs across the country that are more impactful that we should look at bringing here? It can also, Dr. Opperman, be an opportunity for that committee to look at something you've asked about in the past, which is around expanding who
Mhm.
has access, and whether that would have any impact, either positively or negatively, on the outcomes for students who participate.
Okay, so that's basically going to multilingual research and design stuff that we approved.
Exactly. And then in fiscal year 27, you would see a budget ask aligned to that.
Mhm.
That would be about implementation.
Okay,
And that's not to say we already have, just to be really clear, we already have current state, right? So in this year's budget, we have Make It Happen. We have programming for students. This is about the Nellie Mae money is looking at, should we change that? And then next year, we would ask for a budget that aligns to any recommended changes.
okay, good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Lisa, I will simply say thank you so much for your very clear explanation of these numbers. It sounds like we are on target. So I really appreciate all the work that went into that.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to transition to Jennifer Slabink. And in your board materials, you will see that what was posted there are the personnel. And so I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you. And I can share those if it would be helpful. I have those ready to go. I'll also just say, I know that we're starting next month with information around CHRCs and certifications, but I can tell you, just because I happen to have this information relatively freshly in my mind, that we're in pretty good shape with CHRC violations right now. We only have a handful, they're all substitutes. So that's an easy just reminder and fix. And those are all CHRCs that expired over the course of the summer. Our teaching staff has been really good about being on top of it, and our regular staff, so that's great. We definitely have some certification violations that we anticipated, where we maybe have someone with a certification, but they're teaching in a different area than their certification is for. And so they're somewhere in the process, right, of either doing the courses or they've already applied with DOE and we're just waiting. Well, DOE is on a 3 to 4 week delay right now, not too bad. So we have our hands on all of those things, and we have some new staff in HR. And so we're just doing some follow-up with those staff to make sure everybody's on track. But no CHRC violations to be worried about at the moment. So that's very exciting.
Jennifer, I apologize for interrupting you. Could you just explain, in case anybody's watching this recorded later, what does CHRC stand for?
Oh, it's a criminal history records check.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Okay.
just ensuring that the people who work for our district have had their fingerprints done and passed a criminal history check by the Department of Education.
Thank you so much. I apologize for the interruption. Go ahead.
No, it's a great question. We talk in the lingo that we know all the time and forget sometimes that other people have no idea what we're talking about. So, okay, I will try to share if I can do it the right way here. I do have 4 different documents. So first we have probationary. Hopefully this worked correctly. You can see what I'm seeing.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, of course, I'm not looking at that one. Okay, here it is. So probationary teachers, we do have a handful of teachers that will be coming forward for the board's approval tomorrow evening, under probationary first year contracts. And I don't know what the best way, do you want me just to kind of run through all of them, or do you want to stop for questions after each one? If there's any questions?
Yeah, there are 4 documents, correct?
Yes.
I think that we can go through all 4 and then gather up any questions we might have at the end.
Okay, great. So we have probationary teachers. Let me pull up. The next one would be 1 year only teachers. These may adjust coming into tomorrow, just because we've continued hiring, of course, and had a couple new resignations. So we just keep plugging away at that. But currently only 1 teacher on that 1 year only, or 1 social worker. We have administrative personnel. Hopefully you can see, because it keeps showing me the old one. There we go. And one more. The last one is just for board information only. These are employees that the board doesn't vote on, but just for the board to have information about some of the other positions that have been hired for in the last couple of weeks. I know you had a pretty extensive list at the last board meeting. So there's still been a lot of hiring just since then, and I'll scroll through this a little bit. A handful of base employees, some ed techs, non-rep. And I think that's the end of that document. So those are our 4 documents that we'll be having at the board meeting tomorrow evening. Again,
Wonderful.
with maybe a couple of revisions and additions, not revisions, but additions.
Yes, the work is continuing. I understand. I am very curious if you happen to have handy, or even just in terms of a gut sense, how does this year compare to last year in terms of the lay of the land? You mentioned resignations and hiring, and how does it feel? And if you have data to compare this year to last year, that's even better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team has been working really hard. I don't have the numbers. I think Ryan maybe shared them at the board meeting, and I was on vacation too, Sarah. So I was not at that last board meeting, but they have processed hundreds of people between offboarding folks and onboarding new folks. What I can say is that we are definitely ahead of where we were last year. So I think I had presented somewhere along the way that at the beginning of August, so last year was my first year. At the beginning of August, we had some 80 some odd vacancies, and we were, still trying to fill, and it was less than half. I think it was 35 or something like that. So definitely seen good progress in getting ahead of that hiring and moving through it earlier in the year, so that we're not as pushed here coming up to the end of the year. I'm also really excited. I want to bring so many of the new staff from HR to board meetings, but really just want to shout out Rosa Torres, who's doing recruitment and staff development. And Ryan got an email about possible apprenticeship opportunities, and I sent it to her and said, what do you think? And she got on the phone call with the superintendent in Gorham and hooked that up. And so we have some student apprentices who are going to be able to step in and do some ed tech work while they move through, going from ed tech 1 to ed tech 2 to ed tech 3. So that's really exciting, and has been an opportunity to fill some of our traditionally vacant roles. So just really pleased with how quickly she took that on and got that accomplished. So yeah, I would say we definitely don't have as many vacancies. We do have, we had 2, I think today we got a 3rd. So like 3 resignations just come in since Friday. So that's hard because we've been feeling really ahead of it, but we'll get those things posted, and positions will get filled as quickly as we can, and with finding the right people, right? Because it's not just about being quick to fill the vacancies. It's about finding the right people for Portland in that process.
I thank you for saying that. Also, thank you and the whole team for all of the not only recruitment but also retention work that you've been doing. So really, really appreciate all of that. And I'm also just going to do a quick check to see if other board members have comments, questions, insight, any additions to say. Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Of course, hi. Hello, Jennifer. Really good work, and I'm pleased you have a good team. On offboarding, on people who are just leaving because of retirement or leaving for resignation, other reasons for leaving. I presume you're trying to follow up on all the reasons behind all those things. It would be interesting to, at some point, to know categorically what some might be at some point. Okay, just a thought, as we try to retain people.
Yeah, so just to let you know kind of what we're up to in HR land on that front. I mean, the 3 we just got all have jobs in other districts, right? That's
Money.
those are easier ones to identify what's happened there. But just to kind of give you a little bit of the lay of the land, Bridget Wheeler, who's one of our new analysts, has been putting together these 30, 60, 90-day check-ins that will be going out to our, some of our new staff to kind of say about really onboarding with HR, onboarding with their school sites, just general overall perception of district, like what's working, what could we do better, how can we continue to grow and improve in our practices. She's also helping me to put together some exit interview surveys, because we would really like to ensure that we're collecting that data in an anonymous way and then providing a pathway for people who do want to have more of a sit down, thorough conversation, because not everyone wants to have that, right? Put their name to any concerns that they may want to share. And then the other piece we're looking to is to having stay interviews. So doing some random surveys of staff that have been with us for a while and better understanding why they stay, what keeps them here, what do they love about being here, so that we can, be sure to harness what's already in place and great about Portland and really celebrate those things. And also get the message out about those really great things too, so that other employees can kind of be reminded of all the great reasons to work here. So really kind of looking at it from a bunch of different angles so that we're collecting as much data as we can. And then again, just in the spirit of reflection and growth and revising as we need to, as we go along, to just get better.
Good, thank you.
Board member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Hi, this is, I hope, a super quick question. If we have someone, say there's a middle school math teacher who just got a job in another district and so resigned today, does that person stay for a month and then go to the new job, or do they go and we find a sub for them for the amount of time it takes to fill the position?
Yeah, great question. So there is language in the teacher contract that requires 30-day notice. We've actually been reminding people of that this weekend. So there is language in the teacher contract. And we do, Superintendent Scallon does work with, his colleagues in our local counties to ensure that we're having communication. And it happens to us too. We have some employees who can't start until middle or end of September because they have that obligation in the district where they currently are employed as well. So, one of the employees who's leaving us, that's a little bit of a unique situation, but 2 of them are both, understanding that they will be staying through the 30-day mark as per the contract. So when we can, and we work with the superintendents in other districts. If we're able to fill the position sooner, we'll release the person sooner, of course. But that is written into the teacher contract.
I'll just add one additional piece. Jennifer mentioned that it is certainly a piece that other districts have as well, and in some cases longer than 30 days. So ours, I think, is the shortest that I know of at 30 days. There are others that I believe are 60 days as well.
And I also will just add my appreciation for what you were talking about a few minutes ago, Jennifer, in terms of onboarding and stay interviews and all that. I was in conversation recently in another setting where I learned the term everboarding. So instead of like onboarding as an event or onboarding as a thing that happens for like a week, it's, you know, the approach is more holistic. And so I appreciate sort of the notes of that in your explanation of what's been going on. So thank you so much for that. Any other questions, comments, concerns about this? I again applaud all the effort. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you put in and that your team puts in. Are we at the end of the agenda? We are at the end of the agenda, and there are 23 minutes before the next meetings kick off. So well, let's do this officially. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. I see Board Member Oberman has so moved. Second. Board Member Noor, thank you so much. And then by show of hands, adjournment. It is unanimous at 7:07 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.